All right. So I think you're going to have to stop your share. I will start mine. Okay. So yeah, so I'm going to talk real quickly, in theory, in 5 minutes about our developer tools. So what we've got so far in terms of our developer platform comes down to two things. So the first that we can talk about is our CLI, right? Command line interface, right? So it's installable, runs on Mac, installable via Homebrew, runs on Linux and Windows via WSL. So, right now, the basics of getting your apps up and running. So you can register your account right from the command line, create an app and publish an app. So the easiest way to show this is actually to demo. So I'm going to actually switch my screen share real quick and walk through this. So everybody can see my my terminal over here. So I've got a simple demo folder, right, with just a static HTML file. And I have already installed the CLI, but that's the command to do it, right? So a simple Homebrew install if you're on a Mac. So you can see that I've got the latest version. And to start, we run just the setup command. So the setup command is going to ask us for a username. Gotta remember to do one that I haven't used before, and an email. So the email address is really so that we can contact you, right, in any sort of account recovery scenario. We're not spamming that and definitely not selling it. So it's going to take a little bit. So one of the recent changes is we install some dependencies. So Brooke, I'm sure we'll talk more about this, but most of what happens in Fission depends on IPFS, which is the underpinnings of our file system and all kinds of things. So we actually install some of the dependent libraries there. So yeah, so once that's done, I can just simply register a new app. Yes.
Can you actually try moving your terminal window slightly to the right? Jun, is that better?
No, the right side is cut off.
Slightly to the left.
So all of this is in our documentation. Yeah, just wanted to give a quick thing. So if I run Fission app register, it's going to create a new app for me on our platform. Yeah, so that this is like basically all you need to do to set up a new app. Now it's going to ask me for my build directory, right? So if you are using a front-end framework like React or any static site builder like Jekyll, 11D, any of those, most likely you're going to have some build step where it compiles all of your JavaScript into a folder. So Fission app register will actually do its best to guess based on the directory which platform you're using, but you can specify it here. So I'm just going to give a period, which means this app is going to be built from here, from this directory directly. So you can see it's created a new domain for me, long young hippogriff.fission.app. And it's also created this fission.yaml file, which basically stores my configuration information for this app. So the final step, go up here, is to just Fission app publish. And that's going to take whatever is in my build directory, right? So in this case, it's just the HTML file. It's going to put it onto our distributed file system. And after a second, we'll see now it is updated. DNS is all set. So if I just pop open a browser here, this into the middle, you can see my simple HTML hello world file is published live on the internet, right? So it's got SSL, DNS all updated. Ta-da. All right, so let's go back to the presentation. Any questions about that while I toggle here.
Peter asks, can I configure my own subdomain?
Yes, you can. Yes, so command line switches, you can configure your own subdomain. Coming soon. Right now, using your own top-level domain is a thing we support, but it's not supported directly in the command line yet. So that's a thing. You contact us, and we will set up for you. So we have a handful of early apps that are running under their own domain. But yes, you can specify your own custom domain. For developers who have worked with something like Heroku, the tool is very similar to that. The one difference you'll notice, there was no Git, right? Like no Git commit, no Git pushing, right? It's all publishing directly from my local file system.
And yes, so Peter's saying, I guess we're getting SSL out of the box using Fission certificate.
Yes. Yeah. So by default, your app will be under our fission.app domain with SSL all pre-configured and ready to go.
There's all sorts of other fun stuff that we can do there. One of the things I've considered is letting people pick between a couple of other domains that are more fun than fission.app. So we definitely want to, in fact, work with domain name providers. We have a wholesaler on the back end that we already have an agreement with. So at some point, we'll also actually let you purchase domain names directly through the Fission interface. Peter asks, how are my username and email stored?
Yeah, so we do have a server with a database that has your username. You'll notice also I didn't enter a password. Again, all of the authentication is passwordless. But we do have, again, mostly for our own support purposes, we have a database with your email and user address for a developer.
Yeah, that's basically the platform, Peter. And we're working on having an official terms of service and privacy policy where we list all of those things. One of the things that we learned the other day is that certainly for abuse prevention, we're likely going to have to log IP addresses. But again, we'll make sure that we only keep the logs for 24 hours and then flush them afterwards and so on. So we're trying to be very sensitive to only holding as much data as we need to run things as a service. What you should know is that all of your content in the file system is encrypted in the private portion, where even Fission can't get it back. So.
Noted. Yeah, and I guess the only other thing I would say there is this is just for developers, right? So your users, when they log in, don't need to provide the email address, right? So that's just for developer accounts.
Well, no.
No?
That's actually a very good point. So all accounts are equal right now because the new account flow is email address. We've just been creating them en masse and autofilling. So for users, we don't share your email address with apps that you log into. So I think that's maybe the point that you were getting at, is there's this reverse where we're kind of mediating that with developers in a certain way, much like Apple does. So we very much have been inspired by Apple's focus on privacy, not so much on their locked garden thing.
Cool. Okay, so real quickly, the other half of sort of our developer tools is what we call the Webnative SDK. So this is a TypeScript library available on NPM for JavaScript developers. And real quickly, it is 3 main pieces. So the first bit is this authentication and authorization. So when you are building an app, and we're not going to go through line by line in the code, but just to give a quick idea of how simple this is, right? So we have essentially a call to initialize our app in our JavaScript code. And as part of that, we're going to request some permissions. So this is asking the user for access to parts of their file system. And then that initialization will basically check, is the current browser, right, so the current user, have they already authorized this? If not, we will redirect them to our authentication page, which will ask them, right? So similar to any like OAuth-based flow in sort of behavior, right? So you're redirected to a page where you're prompted, hey, this app wants access to these things, right? Yes or no. And assuming you say yes, then you're redirected back into sort of a logged in state to the app. So that's the first bit.
So James, you're telling
Yes.
me that this page of code is everything a developer needs to add authentication and file storage.
Right. Yes.
That's it.
That is
I
what
can
I'm
cut and paste this code.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, this code is available online for cutting and pasting in our developer guide. Yeah. So the second, so again, the authentication authorization, it's user controlled, passwordless login, and also it works offline. So that's one thing that you'll hear us talking over and over again. It's is a focus on offline first web apps. So that's, authentication authorization is the first big piece of web native. Second is the file system. So again, a little bit code, mostly to just show how simple and straightforward this is. If you've ever used a Unix-like command line system, these functions should feel similar. So standard ls, makedir, right, that kind of stuff. The difference is that this is all creating it on a distributed file system, again, that is available offline and encrypted by default, right? So if you've ever had to deal with sensitive data and worried about things like encryption at rest, that is a hard problem in most sort of full stack platforms. And it's something you get in web native by default. The other big thing as of a very recent release is all of your files not only are encrypted by default in the private file system, they are also versioned, right? So for any file that you create through your app, you can also go back, look at previous versions and things like that.
Peter asks, how do you interface with WinFS? Are you ever using the local storage API in browsers?
You don't use local storage directly. Yeah, so WinFS is built on top of IPFS, and the code here is all you need to interact with that. Basically, what the web native library is doing underneath is managing all of those operations for you.
So kind of a yes, no. What we're doing as much as possible is wrapping a lot of these things. Yeah. So whether IndexedDB or local storage or whatever is available, Stephen's doing a lot of work with shared workers and service workers and web workers and all this stack of stuff that is available in browsers, but typically is very hard or you have to write custom code every time. We're trying to just make very stable building blocks that will just work.
Cool. Yeah. So again, summary, it's Unix-like in the API. You have version history, private files are encrypted and available offline. The third major piece is currently in design phase, but sort of the next piece that we will be building into the Web Native Toolkit is our own distributed database, right? So one of the first things that lots of web developers, certainly full stack web developers, look for is, okay, well, how do I use the database? Now, so this is the thing, it's going to be built on top of our existing file system, and it will still follow all of the things that sort of, I guess, we believe in as Fission, right? Like the goals that we've outlined. So it'll still be private, still be user-centric. We are in the design phase for the database sort of API, right? So how developers will interact with it, but it will, I think I can safely say it will be a document-based API. So if, again, as a developer, if you've ever used something like MongoDB or CouchDB, any of the document-based database systems, your experience will be writing writing those kind of queries, right? So updating essentially JavaScript objects. And then we will, much like we do with the file system, we will take care of all of this sort of the underpinnings. Yeah, and it's coming soon. So it's not, yeah, just to be clear, it's not something available in Webnative today. It's something we're actively designing and working towards for early next year. Questions about
yeah, how soon is the main question.
Yeah, like as soon as we can. You know, this is, so when, you know, as Boris mentioned, I've been here for 6 weeks. This was one of the first things.
Why isn't this done yet?
So one of the first things that I, one of my early questions is like, yeah, okay, right, like private encrypted file system, that's awesome. I can think of all kinds of apps that I have wanted to build that I can build on that, and it makes a bunch of things easy, right? So anything that are, anything that deals primarily with files, right? So, I've been working on a sample note-taking app, right? So that's very easy. You have, a file of notes, and I can put those in the file system. And it's great that they're encrypted by default, because now I don't have to worry about that. Keys are all managed for my users. But the first thing, or the next thing I started thinking about is, okay, but what if I want to build, multi-user apps, or apps that are a little more transactional, right? Again, with a full stack development background, I think, okay, well, where's my database, right? And so that's where this is headed. And it's, I think for a lot of our early developers, it's another piece that enables sort of a broader set of apps to be built.
Amazing. Any other questions for James? So to be very clear, this is available today. People are actively shipping everything from baby test apps to actual stuff. Our Discord chat, which I got to train everyone to use the short code for, fission.code/Discord. And go ahead and book time. So you can get time in James's calendar to sit in and talk about approaches that you're taking. We want to have people be successful with this. So please fill up James's calendar more so that I can also continue to ask him when the database will be done.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. The more time you fill in my calendar, the later I have to work to get database.
Wait, what?
Huh?
I ask more about the database. Sorry, I can talk quicker than type. So
sure.
By the way, this is awesome. Like this is really impressive. I'm really keen on Fission. This is an amazing project. I'm assuming you ruled out OrbitDB before you decide to roll your own. Can you explain why? What's different and better?
Click unmute.
Let's actually hold that for the technical portion, Peter.
Okay.
Because Brooke will talk in more detail about some of that stuff. It's a great question. OrbitDB is a distributed database on top of IPFS, which is a core building block for us. So we'll go into that.
Cool. And then maybe you address it later on too, but then just to hold a bookmark for this question. So it's like a document-based database. So is the canonical data chunk is like a JSON document, like that's living on IPFS, and then you're building a database off of that?
Yes.
I think I can just answer a few of these really quickly here.
Yeah.
So underneath log-based, essentially event sourcing, the exposed API interacts with a document, but it's a sequence of events, all static, right? So then we can also take multiple streams and merge them, and from multiple sources, and do merging and unmerging, a variety of things. So if you're familiar with the auto merge, it's much closer in that direction. So we can do after the fact ordering of events. Everybody gets a consistent view. It also works because of some of these properties real time, as well as loading up an existing database. So the short answer to your initial question is log based. We then build up an aggregate view, and then that supports a bunch of
build up an aggregate view. Sometimes that's called CQRS as well, right? Is that the same kind of pattern that you're talking about?
Yeah, it's a kind of CQRS. So it's an append only log.
You mean like a blockchain?
So blockchains have a strict total order. This is only a partial order, but yeah.
I love
Roughly.
event-only logs. Event-only logs are like, and I love event sourcing. So this is great. I'll shut up now, and I'd love to learn more. Thanks.
To add the human version of that, what Brooke just said is we're building some things in so that developers can build things like Google Docs could be built directly on the Fission platform with multiple users editing things in real time. So we ultimately believe that the multiplayer apps are the most valuable. And getting all the way to there is most valuable rather than just a website where you fill out forms, something where people collaborate together. That's another part of our user-centric view. So we are aiming to build very hard tech so that users can have an easy, great experience like Google Docs.
Okay, sorry.
Don't be sorry. This is exactly what this is for. Go for it.
Yeah, this is why we're here.
So do I have to be a TypeScript developer? Like, are you guys going to offer other SDKs at some point?
Yeah, so that's actually one I can handle. The plan right now is to do wrappers for common frameworks and languages, so that it makes it even easier, right? So I've been doing a lot of React development for the last couple of years. One of the first things that I'm looking at is how do we make, Webnative is fairly simple to integrate, but can we, integrate with React's context system and things like that to make it even easier? There's a handful of Elm developers on the call, right? So Stephen in particular is looking at a similar way to plug into frameworks and languages that are, make it even easier than it is now. So the short answer is yes, but again, like everything is in the browser, right? So ultimately we all end up JavaScript-y. Yeah, and we've used TypeScript for the main library.
Yeah, the code has to run in the browser, right?
Yes.
So like something like like Flask is just that wouldn't work. That's too lamp stacky. But like something like Vue is potentially another framework that you could.
Yeah, Vue. Yeah, any of the Vue.js, React, Angular. Yeah, and any of those front end frameworks. Ultimately, we're looking at how do we make the experience even easier inside of those framework, right? Like you can always drop down and use the SDK directly. But most of those frameworks have other features that we'd like to tie into.
It's like you guys are offering an API, so I can talk to an API, but I have to be talking inside the browser to not lose the benefit of having everything inside the browser without a plugin, right? So that's what I'm trying to get my head around. Yeah. Okay.
Inside the browser, it needs to be able to work offline, etc.
Yeah. There's nothing special fundamentally about the browser for any of this stuff. So over time, we expect to have, for example, a native mobile SDK as well, right? Not anytime soon, but replicating this across other platforms so that we can. There's nothing special about having this data in one context or another.